Many people I have spoken to seem to think that as a blind person, I live in total darkness. And of course I can understand why people think that, but I actually don't experience myself living in darkness. Since I don't remember what physical light looks like, I don't have anything to compare with, so I don't see a darkness when I open my eyes. At least I don't experience that. But of course, I can only speak for myself. I cannot voice every blind person's experience. Since I lost my sight when I was 2 years old, I don't remember what it was like to see with my physical eyes, but I suppose it would be very different if you lose your sight when you're a grown-up, because then you sort of know what you are missing. I have never seen myself as blind. I guess I just see that I see in a different way. And very often I find that the word handicaps. We all have some kind of handicap in one way or another. So I guess it's not a big thing for me, the blind thing. I have always had a very rich inner life. I have a colorful world within. But I don't wish to over-romanticize being blind. I just wish to tell you my perspective and the way I experience it. My name is Nenne Panrike, and I'm a Swedish artist, fairytale teller, musician, photographer. Right now, I'm in the middle of a learning process, learning filmmaking, how to make my own videos on YouTube. At first, I felt a lot of resistance around the thought of making my own vlog, because I thought that there are already so many vlogs in the world. But then I came to the conclusion that that is not very constructive thinking. It's better to think that if I add some more beauty to this world, it can only be a wonderful thing. In this, my very first episode, I am going to tell you how I came to be a photographer. And I suppose that the first thing that might come to people's minds when I say this is, how can she be a photographer if she is blind? And of course it's natural to wonder that. For me, photographing is about creating a relationship with my own camera. It's about the gut feeling I get when I feel an attraction to a motif, coupled with what people tell me when they describe my photos afterwards. It's actually quite a thrilling thing that I get to see my pictures with many different eyes. Because when someone describes a photo to me, I see it with the describer's eyes. I find it ever so fascinating what strange shapes people can see in pictures taken in backing light, or the way blurred photos can inspire people to paint with their eyes. And with that I mean that they see what they wish to see there, and that way we can explore our imagination. You might wonder why I started photographing in the first place, and I guess the best answer I can give you is that it's yet another way for me to bathe in poetry. That may sound melodramatic or exaggerated, but that's actually the way it is for me. Imagination and poetry are the only ways I have found in this world to soothe pain and anxiety. Photographs, for me, are doors into a magical world in my imagination. When I was a child, I often dreamed about photographing, but the people around me told me that a photographer or a pilot might not be very suitable professions for me as a blind person. And of course they meant well, they just didn't want me to get my hopes up. So I put photographing out of my mind for many years. But about 4.5 years ago, I just felt such a strong urge to start photographing that I couldn't resist it anymore. And I thought that why should I keep myself from doing something that I want to do with my whole heart just because someone has told me not to? So I bought my first camera and started photographing, and that is the best thing I've ever done, because so many good things have been born from my photographing. My music has improved because sometimes I put music to my photographs, and it has meant so much for my personal growth and my self-confidence. It was such a thrilling feeling when I bought my very first camera. I often give names to my machines that I use because I think that if you give a machine a name, you appreciate it more. So I named my first camera Aquarella because I love when people described my blurred photos to me, because I think blurriness gives such a mysterious feeling, and I love to feel that my photos feel fairytale-ish, if you will. So now I am going to tell you how I see a few of my photos. But of course, it is not my intention to dictate how you are supposed to see my pictures. I would love to hear what you see in them. So if you feel like it, please allow me to see my pictures with your eyes. But anyway, now I am going to tell you my perspectives and my experiences of some of my favorite photos. This picture I have given the name Sunwarm Tears. And this one is really special to me because this was actually the first photo that I ever took when I had just decided to start photographing. This was an early August morning in 2007. It had been raining all night, and I just discovered that the rain had stopped and the sun had returned. And then suddenly I just felt this huge inspiration, because I could picture how very beautiful it would look when the sun is shining on the raindrops. So I took my new camera and I went outside into my little garden that I had at the time, and I could just imagine how beautiful it was when these raindrops were glittering in the grass. So when I took the pictures, I saw the raindrops as sun-warmed fairy tears. Or I could also imagine them as little mirrors for very tiny fairies. So I could see these little fairies walking around there in the grass, mirroring themselves in the raindrops. This photo is also one of the first I ever took when I started photographing, and this one I call Candles in the Greenery, because when a friend of mine described it to me, She thought that it looked like someone had hung up strings of candles in the trees. And I really liked that perspective because I think it sounds magical to have candles hanging in the trees. And, well, the beauty with art, of course, is that there is no right or wrong. I can choose whatever I want to see in a picture. When I had this one framed for an exhibition, someone actually thought that it looked like a watercolored painting. And that idea really appealed to me because I like to think that some of my photos are aquarellistic. And I guess that is because I imagine that when I see the world with my inner eyes, I see shapes and colors in a blurred, soft, mild, aquarellistic way. It might be like that. This photo has a bit of a funny story behind it, because my intention at the time was to take a picture of the view from my living room window, but I wasn't aware that the blinds were down. So instead of catching the view, I caught my own reflection in the window. So that's why I call this picture "When I Became the View", or in Swedish, "Utsikt väcker insikt". This picture I have chosen to call "Yellowing Farewell Letters", because I imagine that the autumn leaves are love letters that the trees have written to the ground. So they are letters that nature has written to itself in the autumn. And also, if you look at how you spell the word leaves, you can imagine that it has to do with saying goodbye. So the leaves leave the tree in the autumn. The leaves are farewell letters. The first time I heard the word fire escape when I was a child, I thought that it meant that through your imagination you could escape into the fire and dance with the flames and meet the friendly fire beings who lived in there. I used to imagine that there was a whole different world in there for me to discover. So this picture I have named "The Fire People". I have always loved dandelions, and I'm aware that most people think that they are just irritating weeds spreading out and taking over the garden. But with this picture, I want to honor them and acknowledge them, partly because of their very healing properties, but also because I think that they are little glowing suns, spreading joy and lighting up a garden. So this picture I call "Little Suns of Hope". This photo actually demonstrates what I want to express with my art. As I told you before, I love when people describe my pictures as blurred, because the blurriness awakens such a mystical feeling in me, and I love mystery. So when I picture this blurred forest scene, I fantasize about some fairy tale beings that I call the eternity children. And they are basically children who don't want to grow up. They just want to stay in that playful childhood atmosphere. So I imagine that any moment they will come running and dancing through the trees. I call this picture Being in Forest Light. This photo was taken in the month of May this year. But when I recently showed it to a friend of mine, he actually thought that it was a picture taken in the winter time, because he thought that it looked like a snow-covered tree. But it is actually a cherry tree in full bloom. And, well, I don't know what you think, but apparently the tree is so full of blossoms that they can be mistaken for snow. And, well, it fascinates me that the boundaries between the seasons kind of fade away, at least in this picture and at least in my imagination. So I have decided to call this picture Enchanted Snow. I'd like to think that the tree has in some magical way dressed itself in snow. May snow. I was out walking by the sea the other night, and as I took out my camera, I just basically felt like catching the mystical sunset glow. So as you can see, I am now showing you both a blurred version and the sharp version of the same motif. And of course, it is a matter of opinion which one you prefer. Some people, like me, prefer blurred pictures, and others like the sharp, clearer ones. For me personally, I just love blurred pictures because they just feel so roomy for the imagination. There is just so much space to play on. So the blurred picture I have given the name The Fires of Beyondia, because I imagine that there is this country beyond the human world, and the fairytale beings inhabiting this land, they have lit fires for other purposes than human purposes. And the sharp version of the picture I call Mystical Longing. The name of this photo is A Resting Place for Seals. When I showed this one to a friend of mine, he could see a baby seal resting on a cloud. He could see a little nose and an eye of the seal. And I really loved to picture that, a little seal resting in the softness up there. I have always loved the feeling of clouds. I mean, you can basically see anything in the shape of clouds. There is so much space for the imagination. Someone once told me that clouds look the way cotton feels in your hands, and that really inspired me. When I see clouds in my mind, I either imagine cloud people living up there and playing and dancing in the softness, or I see woolly patterns embedding the sky, and sometimes I just feel like eating the clouds because I imagine them to be a whole candy store full of cotton candy, something soft and sweet to put in your mouth. From time to time, I give a photo 2 names because I just can't make up my mind. So this one is either called Snow Veins, because a close friend of mine thought that it looked like veins containing snow instead of blood. And I imagine those veins to be inside of someone who has locked away their feelings so deeply that they have become emotionally frozen. And so the other name of this picture is Molly's Playroom. And of course that has a completely different meaning. I imagine it to be the winter home of a tiny fairy-like being called Molly. And she will play and dance in this room all winter long. And even though it is a snow-made room, it is very warm and cozy in there. Warm enough to keep her safe all winter. So thank you so much for joining me in my very first vlog, and thank you for following me through the gateways of my imagination. Hope to see you in my future vlogs. Take care. Bye for now.